Technology is advancing faster than ever, and the intersection of Silicon Valley innovation and Washington, D.C. policymaking has never been more critical. From AI governance to digital equity and tech-driven economic growth, how can these two power centers work together? Mayor Muriel Bowser is at the forefront of this conversation as she navigates how DC can leverage technology to fuel economic development while ensuring responsible regulation. Mayor Muriel Bowser is serving her third term as the leader of Washington, D.C., where she has focused on economic development, technological policy, and urban revitalization. She has championed initiatives to attract tech companies, convert office space into housing, and expand digital infrastructure. Under her leadership, D.C. has invested in major projects like the $434 million Cedar Hill Regional Medical Center and the $515 million Capital One Arena renovation. A DC native and a former council member, Bowser continues to shape the city's future at the intersection of policy and innovation. Thank you, Mayor Bowser, for joining us on the Hilltop today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Bowser.
Thank you.
Mayor Bowser, we're so pleased to welcome you to the third annual Venture in the Capital Conference. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you for having me. It's always good to be on the Hilltop.
We're always lucky to have you. So I'd like to start by saying, you previously stated that Washington, D.C. is the best place in the nation to launch and grow a business. Mm-hmm. Tell us why you think that is and how the city can continue supporting entrepreneurs.
Well, the biggest reason is because of the talent that is here, and we're very proud that people with big ideas want to live and work here and to start businesses here. We're very proud of the great universities that we have here, so we attract people from all over the country and the world to come here and study, and that many people stay. And so that is why I think we're still like the most educated workforce anywhere in the country. And so that's what businesses are looking for when they're thinking about where to start and where to grow. How can I attract and keep great talent? So they want to either be where the talent is or be able to attract talent. And people are also looking for where young people want to live. And does the city, is it a cosmopolitan place? Is there great arts and culture? Is there nightlife? Is there good places for brunch, which is important to a lot of our young workers? And is there a sports scene? But the big question is, can I afford to live there? And when people start thinking about having families, can I afford to buy a house there? Are there great schools there? So, DC has an advantage, I think, over a lot of places, is that we're kind of a big, small town. We're close to other employment centers as well, just a train ride away. And you get all of those things that I just described. So you do have great neighborhoods where people can see themselves living, great schools, great park system, and all of the arts and culture that come with great cities. We also have, in terms of thinking about our workforce, and it's an interesting time that we're in when we're especially talking about the federal workforce and the federal government's place in the district in its part in a productive America, in a productive American workforce. And because of, a lot of the innovation, and oftentimes people don't put these together, innovation in the federal government, but in fact, the federal government has been an innovator in a lot of spaces, and a reason to why people have moved here and may stay here. So I think in this, especially this critical, this kind of tumultuous time in a way, if you're a federal worker, there's always some opportunity that we can think about. There are opportunities that employers are thinking about and workers that are thinking about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And one of those ways you just mentioned of DC being innovative is your recent launch of the DC Venture Capital Program.
Yeah.
And being at the Venture Capital
Yeah.
event, we have to talk about it. So you launched a $26 million fund to drive new venture capital investments to DC-based startups.
Yeah.
Could you please elaborate on why you created this initiative and what specific challenges or opportunities in DC's tech ecosystem that prompted you to launch the fund?
Well, it's a great, we have actually an opportunity that Treasury funded, and specifically was aimed at how can government be a partner in investing in great companies and great ideas. And part of our job in DC government, like depending on who you are, where you are, if I ask you about Washington, DC, you might say, I don't know, the White House is there, Congress is there, the federal government's there, museums are there. And that's it. You don't remember or think about all of the private sector companies that are in DC. So in a lot of ways, we are advantaged by being a government town. In other ways, we're not. The fact is the federal government is our largest employer, but for many years has been declining in the number of jobs it creates. So we've been looking to diversify our economy in the district for a number of years. And we always saw tech as a way to do it because of the workforce, we have. But then we have the job of, constantly explaining to people, hey, we're more than the federal government. You can start your company here, you can hire great workers, and you can grow here as well. And so that is what having a partnership or this tech fund, the venture capital fund, allows us to do. To say the government is going to be a partner with you, and we want workers, we want companies, and we want investors to know that this is happening in DC. And it's been happening, but we want it to happen even more.
Absolutely. And I want to touch on that point. I mean, you mentioned, I think a lot of individuals and tech leaders often express frustration with government bureaucracy. Mm-hmm. And while policymakers argue that tech moves too fast without proper safeguards, but from your experience, what's the best way to foster productive collaboration between those two worlds without over or under regulation?
Well, I think, how should I say this? I think that in some ways government gets a bad rap on regulation. In other ways, the reputation is justified. And so we have spent a lot of time looking at our regulatory agencies and trying to streamline them and just to keep up with entrepreneurs. And I've seen it over time in various industries. We would have a law or a policy created in, the 70s that is just like contemporary commerce and operation and the way people live. It just doesn't work, and we just haven't gotten around to changing it. I think we just need, I'll just give you an example, an entrepreneur, a female-owned business in beauty. She came in and she's describing how we just totally need to change some of our regulations. And as I'm talking to her, I realize she's in a completely different beauty industry than what those regulations were created for. And I coined a phrase. I call it fast beauty. And we need a whole different set of regulations around that. I can go through so many different other retail businesses, especially, that fall into that category. And I'm sure the same instances are happening in tech and in other industry. So what we are open to is making sure that we're presenting sets of regulations or changes to regulations that are supported by industry and that we can move in, we can move fast in DC. This is an advantage that we have being a city, county, state, and move those regulations through. The other real big benefit and this is just a hint about any regulatory change, when you tell municipalities that it saves money or that we can reduce the number of staff needed to do it or the time needed to do it or the space needed to do it, and we can take your idea to a tax generating opportunity for both of us, then that's what we want to be doing.
Absolutely. Well, one of the attractions, I think, to DC recently is that you've struck over a $500 million deal with Georgetown grad Ted Leonsis.
Yes.
Who we're very blessed to have be a part of this university, and Monumental Sports to transform the Capital One Arena and revitalize Gallery Place Chinatown. Can you speak a little bit about what this means for DC and how this can further support innovation in the city and kind of what you were just speaking on?
Well, I think in a lot of ways, Ted, of course, has a great DC business and Monumental, but he's also a big investor in startup companies, and he believes in like finding a great idea and investing in it. And I think he has some really successful launches that started right here in DC. So we're grateful to him for that. And he's a partner, I'm sure, in the work that you're doing here in Georgetown to cultivate entrepreneurs. But he also cares. So he not only has been very generous to Georgetown, he's a leader in some of our education work across the city, K through 12 education work, so that's important. And he owns three of our great teams, the Mystics, the Wizards, and the Capitals, with a pretty diverse ownership group. So Ted had an idea that maybe he would build someplace else. We didn't like that idea that much. And we, over time, over a short amount of time, actually, we came to terms on how we could benefit, the teams could benefit, and the downtown especially could benefit, and that is to invest in just reimagining the arena. And the arena, I've learned a lot about arenas lately. When I go there, I think it looks pretty good. But in order to stay competitive and to attract great players and world-class events, it just needed some sprucing up. But in the way Ted and I think, we wanted it to be more than that. And not only will the inside experience be different, but the way the building communicates with its four sides and the rest of Gallery Place Chinatown is going to be tremendously different. So the district is a big investor, and we own the building now, as we always own the land. And the teams, I think it's going to be about an $850 million project, and we have a good chunk of that.
Ted loves to talk about, when he's on campus, about his first entrepreneurial endeavor was selling snow cones at Georgetown. And we love that story.
Okay. It's maybe one story I haven't heard from Ted. I'll have to ask him about it.
Snow cones are very famous.
Okay.
And they're very successful. One thing that we'd also kind of curious on is that, DC's added over 5,000 new tech jobs recently. In the past 3 years. Many of the students in this room going into tech, going to finance, kind of going into a lot of innovative industries. And curious, there's other cities like Austin and Miami that are growing even faster than DC, but DC's still growing pretty quickly. How does your administration work to make DC as competitive as some other cities and destinations that are growing extremely fast for, tech companies and young talent that are in this room?
Well, I think the answer to this question, and it may not strike you at first as one of the big things we have to do, but it is, and that's to make sure DC is affordable. So both of the places that you mentioned, for long now, Austin, this is not going to be true for long, but people could start there, get housing there at a much cheaper than they can here. And so for us in tech and with every industry, we're competing with other regions for great talent. And one of the biggest things that people look for is if I can afford to live there. And so that's why we have invested so much in affordable housing and creating 36,000 new units in the last 5 years all over the city. It's why we are very proud of the public transportation system that we have. A lot of people starting out, they don't want to spend all their money on a car, so they need to be able to get around. So that's hugely important. And also having great amenities. And so all the things I talked about that makes us a great place to live. We're highly amenitized, and that is what we sell to young workers and to companies. So we think companies are making decisions, of course. I think workforce is one of the largest considerations. But they also want to know that we have a competitive business environment. So one of the things that I tell everybody is one way you can help if you want to be in the DC business community is also engage in policy discussions that affect business. Because there's certainly things that I can do, and I have a 13-member council that I work with that has ideas around business as well. And so being engaged in policy making is key, not just at the end when we're trying to figure out the regulations, but how are we setting up an ecosystem that is supportive of business. I do think that we're achieving more balance in the city. It has been this unfortunate conversation sometimes is business versus community. And I never understood that when business does well, it generally means that we can make more investments in transportation, public safety, human services, parks, recreation, all of the things and all of the reasons that people live in our city and that cities need. So I would really encourage even this for young entrepreneurs and students that you engage in policy discussions. So what do you mean by that? I mean, for example, I'll present my budget to the council in April. We're very proud. We balance our budgets, 28 clean audits. We take care of ourselves in the district. And I'll deliver another balanced budget to the council. But I will be making some trade-offs. There'll be big decisions to be made there. For example, one of the things that I'm trying to communicate as best as I can to the public is, even in a tough budget, I will be making strategic investments in growth. How am I growing the pie? So more jobs, more revenue, more housing, more residents. Like, how do I get there? So that may mean an investment in sports. May mean an investment at RFK, where we hope to have another sports team. But at the same time, I may be making some tough decisions about programs that aren't delivering as well, that would be reduced in a spending plan. So having conversations in our city that aren't just based on, we need more of this on the demand side, but how do we get more? How do we grow the pie? And how do we get there? I was being interviewed another time where somebody asked me, where are you going to raise taxes? How are you going to deal with these demands? And I said, well, our first object is, how do we grow? How do we grow our revenues? And even in difficult times, we have to be focused on investments that create more jobs, more companies, more residents, more housing. And that's how we grow.
Interesting. Curious, on that point, DC's been exploring autonomous vehicles since 2019. And with all the rave of, we've had a bunch of tech leaders earlier today come in, some of them who are experts in autonomous vehicles. Curious, how do you envision autonomous vehicles kind of shaping DC over the next decade or so?
So to be clear, I am not an expert in autonomous vehicles, but our Department of Transportation has been looking at it for a long time. I think we funded a pilot down near the wharf to also study it. Early on, I went out to San Francisco to see what was being developed and look at it firsthand. So while we're supportive of that innovation, we have a very focused concern about traffic safety. And there are even more sensitivities, I think, in the nation's capital when it comes to safety and security.
Absolutely. Mayor Bowser, for all the students in the room, or those who have sights of a career in public service, some of whom might aspire to be mayor one day themselves, what's your advice to them?
I love that question because we really do need good people to run for office. But there are a lot of ways that you can serve. And if you're interested in elective office, there's really no better place than DC, I think, to do it. We have a volunteer position called Advisory Neighborhood Commissioner. I was an Advisory Neighborhood Commissioner. There's some universities that have student representatives that are ANCs for their neighborhood. There are 13 members of the council and one mayor. And those people make decisions, a $20 billion budget, and can take an idea all the way through implementation in less than a budget cycle. So it's really a great place to get things done and to test ideas. And we have been able to be a national model for that type of reform. I think Mayor Fenty was here a little bit earlier. And Mayor Fenty really has shaped the way you can do K through 12 public school reform, and paved the way for the success that we're having now in attracting kids to our public schools. But the idea was the mayor should be in charge of the schools, and we should pay teachers based on their performance. And as a result, we've attracted the best of the best. But something like that only happens in a city like ours. But where we went from an unaccountable school board to having an accountable mayor and city council for how you do K through 12 education. So that's why I say it's important. But how do you do it? This is the one piece of advice I've given steadily for 10 years. If you want to do politics, do politics. So find a campaign for somebody you believe in and get involved in it. Volunteer. Knock on doors, help fundraise, make calls, hang signs, and then you kind of learn the mechanics of how to do campaigns. And then, find what you're passionate about in that space. I would also say this, and maybe not so true now as it used to be when I was coming up in politics, but especially for the young women here, is that people will tell you, well, it's not your time yet, or you need to do this job or get qualified in that way, and then you should run. And I never ascribed to that view. So you should run when you're ready, when you have a good idea of what you want to get done, what your agenda is, and if you think that you can persuade your neighbors to vote for you, that's when you should run.
Absolutely. Thank you for that advice. So how we end every panel is with a rapid fire.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask you 6 questions and give you 30 seconds for each.
Okay.
The first question is, if DC had a theme song, what would it be?
Well, we are the go-go capital of the world. Go-go is our official music. We just opened a go-go museum, and Chuck Brown is the godfather. So I would say, wind me up, Chuck. Was that 30 seconds?
That was under.
Okay.
What's your favorite non-DC sports team?
My favorite non-DC sports team. Yeah, I will pass.
Okay. If you could have dinner with any former DC mayor, who would it be and why?
Well, I just had lunch with Mayor Fenty.
We love Mayor Fenty.
I would say it would be Marion Barry. I would. And I'd be willing to bet that would be the answer for a lot of people in this room if they knew about him and what he did for our city. But he was an incredibly interesting person, brilliant person in many ways. Okay. And he's no longer here, so that would be kind of cool to have dinner with him.
What's the one thing every DC resident should experience at least once?
I would say an ANC meeting.
Wasn't expecting that.
You weren't expecting that. So that's one. And I say that because it's grassroots democracy, and sometimes it's very entertaining. I say that as a former ANC member who had a lot of entertaining meetings. But I would say that because you really get a sense of how you, a citizen, could impact the government. And so few people participate in that way. And so I would say that. The second thing I would say, but I would enjoy some of our parks. We have beautiful parks. Rock Creek Park I just love being in Rock Creek Park.
Okay. If you could rename a DC street after any historical figure, who would it be?
I've been thinking about a woman, a unionist, activist, civil rights leader, Fannie Lou Hamer, a lot lately. So she's not represented in DC. And there are, when we think about this, and I know this may not be kind of the popular sentiment to say now, but we have so few women represented in our statues, monuments and memorials, street names, you name it. So that is important, and it is reflective of a community's values. And so I think we definitely need more women represented on our streets.
Good answer. And then our last question is, if you weren't in politics, what would you be doing?
Well, don't get any ideas, number one. And I would be helping cities. I enjoy it, it's my passion, and I've learned a lot. DC residents have given me tremendous opportunities to learn what works in cities and how, and I always tell my team, what is my job as mayor? My job is to help the most people in the fastest ways that we can, and be strategic about our agenda and get something accomplished in our agenda every single day. And so I know how to do that. I know how to help cities in crises and manage them and come out on the other end. But more than anything, I got in this work because I know that the government has a role in changing neighborhoods and communities for the better. And that's what we've been able to do for the last 10 years.
Absolutely. Well, Mayor Bowser, I cannot thank you enough for
Thank
joining
you.
us. It's been
Thank
so
you.
wonderful.